Recently, after the Indiana Fever and the New York Liberty game, there was a post on X with Caitlin Clark, her agent, as well as the coach of the New York Liberty, Breanna Stewart, aka Stewie, as well as Sabrina Ionescu and some others in the background. And in this photo, you see them communicating. Seems like they had a great time. They enjoyed each other's company. What were they talking about? What was the situation going on? I want to talk about it. Was it a good thing? Were they recruiting? Was it psyop? Let's talk about it. Hello again, my name is Christopher F. Coleman with the Business Intelligence Group. I'm a business leader, advisor, and business coach. And in this video, I want to talk about the New York Liberty. I want to talk about Caitlin Clark, as well as the CBA negotiations and what Caitlin Clark means to the negotiations and to the league and to women's sports. We're going to dive deep into this topic. And first things first, as a business coach, as an advisor, I've worked with investors and organizations through due diligence processes. And what I realized, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of nuances in every organization and every networking situation. There's just a lot of complex things that are going on in negotiations, especially when it's business around money. And when you are dealing with humans all have their own self-interest at heart. They're going to do what's in the best interest of themselves. And it's just human nature. Dogs, you can't stop a dog from barking. You can't stop a dog from scratching its ear or licking itself. And so humans, you can't stop humans from looking after number one. And, there's times where people can show deference. There's times where people can be very empathetic or sympathetic. But in most cases, when you look at a normal distribution, most people are going to do what's in their best interest. And when you have a group of people that form an organization or enterprise, they're going to do what's in their best interest. So I'll lay down the foundation of what I want to talk about in my comments. And so let's look at the first thing. So this is the X post that everybody has been talking about. You see Caitlin Clark with the coach of the New York Liberty. The game, I think the game had just ended. And they're in the tunnel. They're talking behind the scenes. And you have the coach of the New York Liberty. You have Stewie, as well as Caitlin Clark's agent, Erin Kane. And you have Sabrina Ionescu in the background. It seems like she's not in the conversation, but she's just in the midst. And there's some other people. I don't know who those are. Maybe those are, important people in the back office for the New York Liberty. But the first thing I noticed is that this is a picture. There's no video. Couldn't the person get some video to listen in on what they were talking about, or just get more than just a snapshot? So my first thought was, after Caitlin Clark's injury, after, the situation, maybe she was just, really fed up with everything and really started to make some moves. Now, when you look at a lot of these players, women in general are much more long-term thinking. They're planners. They are much more patient than men. And I think that's just a fact. And so they, in college, a lot of them majored in marketing and psychology. And so they know how to pull levers to elicit attention, to elicit a certain response that is in their best interest. And so maybe, maybe some thoughts were, maybe this was set up to generate headlines for CBA negotiations. And so one of the biggest issues in the WNBA and women's sports is that the criticism is that no one watches, there's not enough money. A lot of players in the WNBA and a lot of fans have been saying they should, get paid more. But the counter to that is like, no one's watching it. There's not enough money to pay players what they think they deserve. They shouldn't get paid as much as the men. And I think there's so many different parties or stakeholders or fans. There are the players, there's the WNBA, there's the leadership, in terms of the CBA negotiations. There's the NBA that has part ownership, there's sponsorships. There's Kathy Engelbert, who is the commissioner of the WNBA. There's so many different stakeholders that have their own self-interest at heart. And so let's take a look at Erin Kane. So I went to ChatGPT and asked, who is Caitlin Clark's agent? So Erin Kane of Excel Sports Management is Caitlin Clark's agent and serves as Excel's vice president of women's sports, overseeing Clark's brand development, endorsement, negotiations, and off-court strategy. So the first business tip that I can give to anybody in business, as an entrepreneur, for those that are working in an organization that are trying to work their way up the corporate ladder, taking care of family, whether you're clocking in, you have to be able to be an agent for yourself, be an agent for your self-interest in a wise way. What do I mean by that? Agents for top talent are there to be a barrier in business negotiations. We're human, and you can't help but to get upset. You can't help to get envious, jealous. You can't help but to feel used or abused. You can't help certain emotions when conversations are about you. Just think about you, or think about a player negotiating on behalf of themselves. I think Lamar Jackson was one individual, but just think about someone negotiating with an organization, and the organization, they have their self-interest in heart, and they're going to do the best that they can to pay you the least amount as possible while getting your talent or getting the value that you bring to the organization. They're not interested in paying the max. I mean, that's just human nature. That's just good business. And so they're going to highlight all of the problem areas that justify them to pay you less. And so you and me, as entrepreneurs, business leaders, entrepreneurs, those who are working, punching in, trying to take care of their family, we sometimes have to put our agent hat on to be able to be an individual or to have an attitude that can advocate for ourselves, to be in a business mindset, to not get overwhelmed by some of the negativity that might come our way, to lower our value so that the other party or the other stakeholders can win the negotiations or get what is in their best interest and heart. So you have to come prepared with EQ, IQ, leverage to be able to negotiate what you think you deserve. Part of that as well is understanding a lot of the nuances around the negotiations. So Erin Kane, here's some more information. So some of the things she's talked about: unfair compensation. Kane has repeatedly expressed that the WNBA cannot adequately compensate Clark relative to her impact. She stated, will Caitlin Clark ever be paid by the WNBA what she's really worth to the league? I don't think that's possible. And that's in quotes. So Caitlin Clark has brought so much attention to the WNBA. I did a video with talking about Angel Reese and what she means to the team, what she means to the league. And in her own right, she's brought a lot of attention to the WNBA. But Caitlin Clark has brought way more attention. There's been great athletes in the WNBA. I think my all-time favorite WNBA player is Maya Moore. She can ball, she can hoop. You have a lot of great names: Lisa Leslie, swoops. Like there's catchings. There's so many different WNBA legends that have. When you say the name, people in the WNBA space they know, but nationally, internationally, outside of basketball, outside of sports, nobody knows who these people are. Everybody knows Caitlin Clark, and maybe it's the time, maybe it's the time period in which it's all the cards stacked up right. There's social media, there's internet, there's a lot of racial tension going on, and so maybe it's the time. It's just the timing of it, which brings me to another business point. Sometimes it's just not your time. Sometimes you have to wait your turn. Sometimes to get what you want means to be patient and to be humble, to take a step back until the cards are there, till everything is aligned. You're taking a risk because you don't know the future. But as you see, when you talk about AI, I was able to look up, more about Erin Kane with ChatGPT. Without the internet, you have no ChatGPT. So there are certain things certain technologies or certain eras, software that without that era, without that software, without the internet, you can't have big data. You can't have ChatGPT or AI. And so you can argue without catchings, Lisa Leslie, Candace Parker, you don't have Caitlin Clark. You also can say without Angel Reese, you don't have Caitlin Clark at the magnitude that it is now. You can make that argument, and I think it would be a fair argument. And so sometimes it's just not the time. And so being able to discern that, sometimes you want to say something in a conference meeting. Sometimes you want to say something in negotiations. Sometimes you might want to say something that's not fair, but it might not be the right time. You could be right, but you could be dead right. You could be so right that everybody hates you. I've been there. All right, so the next thing, it says league-wide pay reform. Kane emphasizes that Clark is part of a larger player body and that all WN players deserve better recognition and play, not just superstars. Catalyst for new market standards. Branding Clark alongside the likes of Serena Williams and Simone Biles. Kane describes her as one of one. Someone redefining that elite female athletes can achieve both on and off the court. Refining what elite female athletes can achieve both on and off the court. I have 3 daughters, and I think this is amazing to see. And I think there is value in women's sports. And a lot of it is about marketing it. If you study marketing is something to impress upon people, to build a brand. And so a lot of times you can get, really sorry products, bad products, and you can put good marketing behind it and it will sell. Maybe it won't sell for long because it's a bad product, but marketing could make things, make some revenue increase. And so when you talk about the WNBA and their product, there's different ways to market. You just have to invest and put the money behind it. And, I think the product has gotten better. The talent has gotten a lot better. And Caitlin Clark is a big part of it, but you can't discount all of the players that came before Caitlin Clark. So you have Erin Kane discussing Caitlin Clark and how the WNBA can't adequately pay her in comparison to what she brings to the value that she brings to the WNBA as well as the organization. And so when you look at this picture, during the CBA negotiations, investors are all talking about return on their investment. That's their interest. That's their self-interest. They want a return on their investment. They're going to downplay all of the talking points that the players and the association has, and they're going to highlight, that they have not been turning a profit year after year, and that's what they're going to highlight. And so there's been talks about bringing Caitlin Clark into the negotiations. And what if, and this is just me speculating, just knowing mankind, just knowing human nature, What if the deal is that Caitlin Clark goes to New York, where it's a bigger market than the Fever? Caitlin Clark alongside Sabrina Nescu and Stewie, that would be amazing. It's a bigger market, more eyes, bigger than Indiana. And so what if it's something going on behind the scenes saying, hey, to get a return on our investment, Caitlin Clark, who's bringing in the most attention, needs to be in a bigger market so that we can get more eyes. So what if this is a preamble just to see what people are talking about, just to kind to, soften the blow, or maybe it's just psyop to get people to, see her happy. Who knows? But just thinking from a business aspect. And so this is another business tip. When negotiating salary, when in a due diligence process, through maybe it's, acquisitions or mergers, or, looking for investment, maybe you're working with a bank to get money or a loan, whatever the case might be. Maybe you're trying to get top talent to come to your organization. Whatever the case might be, you really have to understand the bigger picture and see things from other stakeholders' point of view so that you can negotiate in a way that resonates with those stakeholders. And so the agent is saying that, hey, you can't pay my client enough. And the league, in terms of the investors, are saying we can't get a return on our investment. So how can we mix all of these things together in a pot and come out with an outcome? So let's listen a little bit to what Erin Kane has to say.
We're going back a long way now, and so the message that was given to me and the sort of consensus was there's no money in women's sports. We're not interested in being there. The real money is in Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NFL, the big three, PGA Tour. Women's sports was not, we would represent an LPGA player here or there, but it was not a business initiative or a priority.
How would you contrast that with what the marketplace is like now?
Obviously now we're in a completely different place. People are brands, investors, owners. Everybody is coming to the table and understanding that women's sports is good business. It's such a fun and exciting time, and I am glad I've stuck with it all these years to get to be part of what's now very exciting. There's so much great stuff going on, really at any given moment. And even we can just narrow it to women's basketball. Let alone across kind of all women's sports. Right now, we're in the middle of college season. Obviously, tons of people following some of the great matchups, UConn, Tennessee, UConn, South Carolina. Just really big, iconic moments. You just saw the jersey retirements for Caitlin Clark and obviously Asia Wilson as well. That's all going on. We've got Unrivaled going on down in Miami, Florida, which has been...
She brought up Unrivaled. And so I think that there are a lot of business-minded individuals in the background helping players. They want to see women get more of the pie. And you have to advocate for yourself. And, maybe they see value in themselves that other people don't see. And when you see a business individual with this scarf on and a jacket on, she means business. She means business. And the fact that she brought up Unrivaled lets me also know that everybody's working together. They want to get paid. And to do that, they have to work together. And so maybe all the players aren't in the know. Who knows? But the smart WNBA players know that Caitlin Clark could really help with negotiations and move the needle in terms of compensation. And so Unrivaled is an organization that has been built by Nafisi Collier as well as Breonna Stewart to put leverage on the organization, the WNBA organization, to increase their pay. And if they don't, I could see the Unrivaled League garnering a lot more attention, a lot more revenue, and really, taking a lot of the spotlight away from the WNBA. And if there's a lockout, that is definitely the case. And so it looks like, if negotiations don't turn the corner soon, that is exactly where we'll be going, would be a WNBA lockout. And so I hope you got a lot of business nuggets from this, being an agent for yourself, understanding some of the nuances in business negotiations, understanding the nuance so that you can get leverage to get what you need and what you want out of the negotiations. Another business principle that we talked about is self-interest. Everybody, every organization, all stakeholders all have their self-interest at heart. And so being able to know your worth, as well as know the value and the nuances of the other stakeholders, gives you leverage in negotiations to get what you want. Again, my name is Christopher F. Coleman with the Business Intelligence Group. I'm a business leader, advisor, and business coach. Catch you in the next one. Peace.